Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Appointments and Staffing of the 21st of July 2021. As you all know, we are now broadcasting these on the internet by virtue of you watching us. So we'll open the meeting now with apologies for absence.
Apologies for being present.
Just bear with us a second, allow council people to take his place. You're right.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Shree people have given her apologies and I was the main substitute.
Yes, and I believe you've been held up in transport on the way, so...
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I believe everyone is now present, and Councillor Simon People is replacing Shree as substitute. And thank you, Councillor, for rushing back from Birmingham and getting here. So, with that, we'll move on to agenda item 2, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. Is it your wish I sign those as a true record? Councillor Daniel Cook.
To move those, Mr. Chairman, as I believe I chaired it.
I think you did.
Happy to second. Oh, sorry.
Councillor P seconded. All those in favour?
Of Councillor P
Thank
seconding or of the motion?
Item 3 on the agenda is declarations of interest. I've not been made aware of any. Does anybody have any to declare now? No? Okay, so we'll move straight on to item 4 on the agenda, which is the Temporary Growth and Enterprise Officer. And I believe Zoe Willicke is taking this one for us.
I am, thank you, Chair. So I'm bringing you this report on behalf of the Assistant Director for Growth and Regeneration, who is on annual leave this week. The purpose of the report is to seek and agree an additional but temporary post of Growth and Enterprise Officer associated with delivering projects around specifically street trading and car park operations focused on income generating activities and will have designated targets and outputs. So the Economic Development and Regeneration team have been exceptionally busy throughout the pandemic period, and they had some additional responsibilities added to its service areas at the last restructure, namely car parking, street trading and market operations. Due to their wider service priorities, such as future high street funds, they didn't start the work initially on this, and now the future high street funds workload and COVID workload and the reset and recovery work are meaning that they don't have the capacity within the current team to do that. I do need to make a point at this time that the comment about the transfer of duties were not supported by the transfer of staff. The duties were within job descriptions of the staff within that restructure back then. Okay, so we do have unforeseen workload, and therefore they're seeking for a new position, and the details and costings of which are within the report. Now, another point that I need to make within the report is that the costings do include a 2.5% uplift each year. However, we don't have an agreed pay award, and we don't know what it will be for future years, so we do need to have that removed from the report as well, please. So in terms of any risks arising from this report, we do need to have processes and policies for street trading by September. Capacity is a big risk across the team, given the work that they've been doing across the key work streams at the moment. And the other strategies won't be developed to allow for a clear structure for the future. So therefore they are seeking, ask that the committee approves the creation of an additional Growth and Enterprise Officer at grade F for 3 days per week, temporary for 18 months, and gives authority to the Chief Executive to implement the changes. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments, Councillor Daniel Cook?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, just to clarify, Zoe. So obviously we have the report laid out in front of us, and just as you've read, we've got recommendations 1 and 2. Would we therefore require a third recommendation that says any future pay award or increase falls in line with the rest of the staff? Would that tidy the matter up if we put it in as a recommendation? So
Yes,
if, with your
thank you.
permission, Chairman, do you want me to move the 2 recommendations and a third one that any future pay increase or pay award falls in line with the rest of the Borough Council staff? And that just tidies that matter up, if that helps.
Yeah, I'm happy for you to do that. Councillor Peoples indicated, I don't know if it's a question, so if we can exhaust questions before we get to that stage. Yeah.
I'd be happy enough to second what Councillor Cook has suggested, if that helps, Chair. I've got no problem with the actual proposal. I'm just asking this question. First of all, what can they actually do about car park income, given that I assume it's under contract and therefore the only thing they can do is, it's dependent therefore on how many people park, not something they can do. And then the other part of my question was, we recently had a report at a much more senior level about a post for which we then struggled to recruit. This is for 3 days a week. Are we confident we can get what we need for that offer? So, I'm asking through the chair, Councillor Cook. After 23 years, I do know how to do things. So if I can ask you through the chair, ask the officer if they could tell us what they think, because we were all pretty confident before that things could be sorted and then they weren't. And I'm just wondering, pressure on 3 days a week type appointments. Thank you.
No, thank you. So there are two questions there. One was about the driving car park income, and the other one was about the potential of recruiting to that. So could you...
With the endorsement of being happy to second Councillor Cook.
Yes, I'll come back to that bit in a minute. Yeah.
Fine.
So could you respond to those questions, please?
Yeah, definitely. With regard to car park income, if I may, I'll ask the Assistant Director for Growth and Regeneration to provide a written update on what the plans are for that. And with regard to the recruitment, it is, who knows? We've had some posts that we weren't sure that we would get a quality pool of candidates, that we've had a really good pool. Some posts that we were sure that we were going to get a really good pool that we've not had is with the one that Councillor People was referring to.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just follow through that on that, Chair, and just say, do we need some sort of contingent recommendation for you as chair stroke leader to be given authority to amend that if that was the right way, if we weren't able to recruit on the terms we got here, because otherwise we'd be into yet another meeting to approve an amended version of what we're all I presume in principle approve of.
Okay. Would that be of benefit to the process?
Very
Would that
much
give us
so.
the safety net we need?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Councillor People, on that. Councillor Daniel Cook wanted to come back in.
Yeah, it was a comment more than anything, Mr. Chairman. I think Councillor People has eloquently put, I would hope we all support this. Looking at the list of the pressures that are within the report, we look for this temporary officer to undertake. This is important work at an important time for this council and this town. We know we've got to get future high streets funding right. We have an opportunity to completely regenerate and protect our heritage and create a town centre that is more welcoming to visitors. It's not work we can afford to get wrong. On the car parking, we do need to look at a strategy and look at how we charge and where we charge and when we charge, etc., etc. I mean, it's something that came up during Tamworth What's Next when we consulted with the public, which I always thought was an interesting idea, and I'd be curious to see if it could be looked at. Just as an aside, is we currently charge people when they arrive. If they pay for 2 hours parking and they get stuck in a queue in the shop, rather than have a walk round some more shops, they race back to the car to avoid a ticket. Well, actually, should we be charging them as they leave? That way, all of a sudden they might say, I don't mind another 50p because I fancy walking in that shop. So I think there is things we need to understand about a car parking strategy. But I do actually take on Councillor Simon People's point. It is difficult to regenerate the income without putting the charges up massively and then nobody comes. Or you could put them down more, people might come but you end up with the same income. It's something that really does need looking into and it's complicated. But I welcome this officer undertaking this work and certainly support this report. If Councillor People has moved that additional recommendation, I'll re-second again so we've got the 4, if that tidies things up. Yeah,
so,
that makes sense.
So in terms of... Steady on. Just to pick up on the points you've made, Councillor Cook, yes, this officer role will be involved in the driving of that income. In terms of the direction with car parking, then I'm sure with your portfolio hat on, you'll be looking into that anyway and working with colleagues as to alternative ways of doing it. So that's a challenge back. In terms of the recommendation that you've moved, Councillor Cook, Councillor People, is the approval of the creation of an additional Growth and Enterprise Officer at grade F for 3 days a week, temporary for 18 months. Authorise the Chief Exec to implement the changes, and that future pay comes in line with any future pay deal, in line with the rest of the staff, and that delegated authority is given to the leader and Chief Exec to resolve any issues should we have a lack of application to the role. Have I captured that there?
To get the right solution.
To get the right solution, yeah. Okay.
I'm only concerned. Through you, Chair. I'm only concerned that when I raised the issue about revenue, what I was really meaning was we've already got one existing contract that can't be varied in the short term. So, it does involve quite a lot of work, and just my concern, we might be lucky, might get the right person for 3 days, but if we didn't, let's not make it harder to get the right person.
And I'll share that concern, particularly when we're talking about street trading and the September deadline. It's while the sun's shining, get people trading in the street rather than waiting for winter and it's too late. So yeah. Okay, so that is moved and seconded. Anybody else want to comment before we move to the vote? In that case, can I have an indication of all those in favour of those 4 motions? Okay, that is carried. Thank you very much. And that brings us on to item 5, which is the pay policy statement. Jackie Noble.
Thank you, Chair. So this report details Tamworth Borough Council's pay policy statement so that statutory guidance as set out in section 38 of the Localism Act is adhered to. So moving to the executive summary, under section 112 of the Local Government Act 1972, the council has the power to appoint officers on such reasonable terms and conditions as the authority thinks fit. The pay policy statement, as set out in Appendix 1, sets out the council's approach to pay in accordance with the requirements of the Act. So the purpose of the statement is to provide transparency with regards to the council's approach to setting the pay of its employees by identifying the methods by which salaries of all TBC employees are determined, the detail and level of remuneration for Tamworth Borough Council's most senior staff, i.e. the chief officers, as defined by relevant legislation, and the committees responsible for ensuring the provisions set out in this statement are applied consistently throughout the council, and recommending any amendments to full council. So once approved by full council, this policy statement will come into effect and it will be subject to review on a minimum of an annual basis in accordance with the relevant legislation. The Equality Act 2019 also requires Tamworth Borough Council to calculate and publish the pay gap between female and male employees each year. Normally it features part of the pay policy, but this year we brought it forward and we took it, and it was ratified at full council on the 16th of March. In terms of resource implications, there are no resource implications associated with this report, as all pay is accounted for within the approved budgets and current salaries are budgeted at 11.6 million. Moving on to legal risks and implications, section 38 of the Localism Act must be complied with. Therefore, so as to minimise the risk, this report must be approved by full council. Moving to equalities implications, I've touched on that already. So the Localism Act was subject to consideration in terms of compatibility with the European Convention of Human Rights and contains a statement by the then Secretary of State that the provisions are compatible with equalities legislation. The pay policy statement is now part of a wider transparency and equalities framework alongside the gender pay gap, which I referred to. So the recommendation is that the committee approve the pay policy statement to be presented to full council for adoption and publication in line with the Localism Act 2011. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions on the report? No. In that case, does anybody have any comments to make before we move the motion? No. Excellent. So I'm happy to move the motion that we approve the Pay Policy Statement 2021 to be presented to full council for adoption and publication in line with the Localism Act 2011. Councillor Pritchard. Councillor Pritchard seconds. All those in favour? That is carried. Thank you very much, and thank you, Jackie, for that report. We now move on to item 6, which is the social media policy, and I believe Zoe Willicky's introducing that one.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to bring before you a social media policy which has been developed for employees, casual workers and contractors, which provides the framework for employees in their use of social media. As we know, social media is at the centre of our interactions now, and whether that's with each other as individuals, councillors interacting with constituents, or Tamworth Borough Council as an organisation interacting and engaging with our customers. This represents both opportunities and challenges for the council. Whilst it can be challenging in some areas, it is an integral communications tool in our modern world. So the aim of this policy is to preserve and protect the reputation of Tamworth Borough Council and its employees, to support the development of social media sites to promote customer engagement, promotion of council services, increasing transparency, sharing key messages and improved digital-based customer services, and also to inform employees and other users about the acceptable use of social media in their professional capacity, ensuring that the council's not brought into disrepute by affiliation with unsuitable sites or through comments posted on public forums. We do need to understand how to use social media appropriately and effectively, whilst understanding some of the pitfalls, and they are laid out within the policy. The policy gives us a framework for the safe, responsible and legal use of social media, and giving guidance for employees for when using social media for both their personal and managing account on behalf of the council. It also includes the relevant laws such as copyright, libel and data protection, and also existing Tamworth Borough Council policies such as our acceptable use policy and code of conduct. To implement the policy, we will use our online policy management tool called Astute. It will give online training for all employees and will be available through InfoZone. Employees will be expected to complete the training, and we will provide further support for any that need it. So in terms of resources, the minimal resources required for implementing the policy, which will initially be required during the rollout, to provide support where necessary. The communication and marketing team do provide daily monitoring of all social media. A number of legal documents have a bearing on the rationale of this policy, and the risks associated with it are employees could refuse to sign it or do the training. They see it as an infringement of their human rights, or that they may breach the guidance within the policy in their social media usage. To mitigate those risks, we'll provide clear training with clear messages of the use of the policy. We have consulted the trade union about the policy, and they're fully supported of it. The capability and conduct policy will be invoked for employees who do breach the policy and guidance. There are no adverse equality implications from implementing the policy. We have undertaken an equality impact assessment, and it is included as part of the policy. So therefore, I'd like to recommend that the social media policy for employees, casual workers and contractors is formally approved for immediate implementation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've got a question or two, but open to committee. Any questions at this point? Councillor People?
Can I just check whether the actual policy was appended to the agenda? Because when I was looking at it myself previously, I couldn't find the policy. I could find a document added, but not the policy. I've been given a copy of it when I came in, but
Chair, may I show? There's the social media report and the additional documents there. You do have to watch that. It seems to drop below. So.
yeah. Okay. Well, I'll take that as having been circulated. No, it struck me that if I was right, it wouldn't have been circulated in advance, which therefore it'd be quite important to have.
Yeah, I've got a link on mine.
Yeah, that's fine.
So,
It was just something.
Yep,
My other question, Chair, was that one of the things that I know has been an issue is, or can be an issue, is where staff are friends of members, and I wondered whether we've got an agreement as to whether staff should not, because I understand there was in the past some encouragement for people to go on, be friends of members so that they could monitor what was put out, and I just think that's something which would need to be clarified, because certainly I'd feel that if an employee was asked to be a friend of someone just so that they could monitor what was put out, that's probably not some. If they refused, you'd feel that they had a right to refuse. That's something I wanted to just clarify. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, can we pick that up?
Okay, definitely. Within the personal use of social media section of the policy, one of the recommendations is that the staff should consider carefully friend requests from service users, their families or friends or others, e.g. contractors, elected members, and accept them only if you're quite sure this would not put you in a position of having a real or apparent conflict of interest as a council employee. So we're not instructing, but we're making a very strong recommendation.
Does that satisfy your query on that one?
It's enough on that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Councillor Cook. No, come on.
Yeah, thank you very much. Not a question, just a comment. Obviously, in my real world day job in international logistics, I signed one of these many years ago. Obviously, I do business and trade with many parts of the globe, and social media faux pas can get you in quite a lot of trouble in different cultures and different societies. So yeah, my company is crash hot about this, and anything posted during work time or even in your own personal time that crosses the company really can get you in a lot of hot water, and I had absolutely no problem signing it because it is the right thing to do. I think we have to remember, while a lot of society thinks social media is a free pass to say and do as you please, it is not. And it is right that we give our officers all the tools they can to ensure that members and staff are recording themselves correctly to the positions they hold, which is representing residents of this town to the best of their ability. So I am an absolute supporter of this policy, Mr. Chairman.
Hey, thank you, Councillor Cook. Okay, if I may, one of the big struggles we have with social media, and I'm stealing this from somebody else, is if you were to reinvent it now, you'd remove the anonymity of the comments and that facility to bully and whatever else, but that's beyond our control. In terms of the risk associated with the report, and particularly the second one around an infringement of human rights, I'm not sure that it goes that far to infringe human rights, but I'm also always cautious of policies which restrict freedom of thought and approach, and whether a person's opinion is correct or not, unfortunately they are entitled to have that opinion. So I would be interested in how we respond to opinions which are genuinely held, however others find them offensive or whatever else, and how we respond to that. And we talked about pitfalls. Developing that same point, how do we as an authority deal with historic mistakes of employees? We have seen a lot in the press and media, and we can all point at examples of big celebrities who have at some stage in their in growing up put something stupid and abhorrent on social media, not understanding the ramifications at the time. However, 10 years later, that's pulled back up, and there's an instant call for a public hanging. So what do we do to support members of staff who have made those historic mistakes, and they come to light in a negative fashion many years later?
Thank you. So I'll do the historic mistakes. The emphasis of the policy is on within the course of their employment. So, and one would hope that those long gone historic mistakes wouldn't be within the course of their employment, because we probably would have picked up on them before. The other one, with regard to the opinion and the human rights, we have had a couple of cases. We didn't have a policy to back us up at that point to be able to investigate and deal with those things. So things would be taken on an individual basis as and when they come up, and we would look at them at that time. But we do talk in the policy that, to remind people that their opinions may be offensive, and it is absolutely imperative that they think about the impact on others when they're with what they're posting.
Yeah, and particularly if there's an association with the authority, then it's a reputational issue. So yeah, appreciate that. Thank you. Any further questions, or council people?
Building on your point, Chair, I noticed that one of the things that was described as not a factor was members of or relating to gypsy stroke travelling community, which is a vulnerable group in that sense. And I wondered why it did apply to some of the others but not to them. And then secondly, building on your point, it says those having an offending past is not a factor. Now, in one way I can see that's exactly right, but what I was wondering was if someone breaches the policy or have breached the policy and are given a warning or something, how does that fit then? I mean, I'm sure you've thought about it, but I'm just asking, there's got to be a point at which if you do take someone on as temporary revenue officer and then you find out afterwards 3 years ago they put something inappropriate on there, that is an offending past. So does that come into this? How would you deal with that, picking up your point?
Yep, can you?
Okay, so that's as part of the equality impact assessment, and that the emphasis on those having an offending past is about the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act. So people who have committed a criminal offence, and that's why this hasn't got it's not a factor with in the equality of the policy. And going back to the gypsies and travelling community, it's interesting you pick up on that because we did look at that because obviously we do have a lot of social media around gypsies and travellers in Tamworth. However, this is about the internal angle of it and the impact on the gypsy and travelling community of us implementing this policy. So there should be no, because people will be adhering to it, and therefore there wouldn't be an impact on the community. Thank you.
One of them were employed by the council, they'd be being treated the same.
Yes, they would be treated the same, yes.
I just wanted, because it's such a sensitive area with social media,
Yeah,
I thought I'd just
definitely.
get that out of the open now while we're...
Okay, thank you, councillor people. Councillor Pritchard, did you indicate or stretch? Just a stretch, okay. Are there any further questions or comments on the social media policy? No. In that case, Councillor Daniel Cook.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Knowing me as you know me, I'm never comfortable without a recommendation being moved. That we also thank the officers for their diligence in this and their understanding that this is an important subject, and the reputation of the council is important to all of us. So it was just to thank the officers at that point.
No, thank you, Councillor Cook, and I think the rest of the committee will share that thanks for the officers and the work you've done on that. So with that, we'll move the recommendation that the social media policy for employees, casual workers and contractors is formally approved for immediate implementation. I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Pritchard seconds. All those in favour? Okay, thank you very much, and that is carried. That brings us to the end of the public section of this meeting. So could I move the exclusion of press and public, please? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Simon People has seconded that, so all those in favour? Okay, thank you. So can any press and public who are present please leave, and can we stop the webcast, please?